If you like animation, you've likely been enjoying the hell out of Arcane Season 2. It's inspiring a lot of animators right now, including my students, because the whole style of the show is very appealing, the general art direction, and the animation itself is very solid, regardless of however you may feel about how the story turned out. So recently, with several students in Rusty Animator School, we decided to geek out on this with a frame by frame of Arcane's sequences. And they had so many useful takeaways from our hangout, from body mechanics to acting, anime influence, and camera, that I thought it would be very useful to share with you as well. Useful in terms of inspiring you, useful in giving you practical tools and insights that you can use in your animation right now. We're going to geek out about Arcane, and we've got a ton of clips to look at. There's probably going to be some spoilers, so if you're really bothered by that, I guess try to ignore stuff or disappear. I don't know, somewhere in the middle of that. Come back to this later. Whatever you want to do to avoid it, but we're going to probably see some things. So, all right, we'll kick things off. I think I'll take a look first at this Warwick scene, his first appearance here.
Was that?
Big fat hero.
A lot of cool stuff going on here. I think you'll agree. There's both some acting stuff and some really good body mechanics stuff and camera work and everything. And we're gonna see that throughout. I mean, as you guys know, the animation's pretty polished up in this show. I like
The hell was that?
just these simple mechanics are overlooked. I think even by us who animate. We really can feel the weight of Vi pushing down here and pushing down, and then that overlap here, that follow through from that move as she stands up. Good old sit to stand. You guys aren't familiar with that at all, right? You can see it here in production. So those skills were useful, even if you were going to do the exact same thing, right? So just the way she stands up there feels very realistic from those body mechanics, right? And then she continues putting her weight over to this right-hand side as she comes close to us. And we don't see those feet, but it feels like all the right stuff is being done with the hips and the legs, right? Because we've got this proper weight shift where the body has come over to this side, and then it's going to counter the other way for her to step into this pose, right? And I mean, that's some pretty sweet framing right there as well, you know? Pop quiz time. I'm gonna play this section really quick. How does the kid feel?
Nervous and scared.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious, right? Why is it obvious? How do you know that?
Just the quivering lip and the, you know, even just like the tilt of the head, kind of looking through like under the top of the, or looking just under the top lids.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Anything else?
she steps backward, like a little.
Yeah. And the compositing as well, she's very like blocked off. She doesn't
Yeah,
have any more
protected.
space to go for like.
Yep. Yep. In this quick example, which we could easily overlook, but not by thinking, if we don't think about it, we just get sucked into the story. But you're seeing here how we have no dialogue, but we clearly know how she feels and what's going on with her. Right? Everything's reinforcing it, the composition, the lip quivering, what's going on in the face, the eyes being wide and kind of where they are, and then you know, that stumbling backward, hesitant, the quick little frantic blinking, all of that stuff. You're seeing how the body mechanics is coming into play to sell that emotion, right? That's why so much of what we're doing all the time is trying to get you those body mechanics under your feet so they become second nature. And then you'd be like, okay, am I going to use the shoulders here and a lip quiver there and blah, blah, blah to get this feeling across? Does a step back get that? That's that acting level, right? That's why that's harder to do, is it's just on top of everything else. But you can have a short little shot like this on production, could be your job, could be a demo piece you do, right? And it can convey a lot, show a lot of skill, look really appealing, done. And it's not super long here. We're looking at, you know, 50 frames. And then you can see here that's been amplified. So a lot of times when we're first scared, we're paralyzed and trying to assess the situation, maybe.
Just
And
lowering the
then-
head too. It's just like,
Yeah.
try to
How-
train inside of her like that. Like, woo.
Yeah. So yeah, she's lowering her head, she's cowering, she's getting behind another character, she's shielding herself even more compositionally. That's things that you want to be thinking about as an animator too. If you've set up a good composition, a good stage, right? You can use the environment to help sell what's going on with the attitude of the character. And then she's got that bigger shock reaction to the sound, right? Like when we're in that fight or flight mode, we're processing, and then the shock hits the face and the whole body reaction, you get a bigger move. So she jumps and moves a lot more here, right? So this is where you're getting the acting into all this action, this heavy action scene, jumping into where Warwick first really attacks. Just obviously PG rated here, but just brutal, right? And you're seeing here how we feel like he charges ahead because of the camera. And then we just pop right into he's here, right? And you get him rising up. Note also like where he is in the frame. Like he's so much higher than us. We're down low with the camera looking up. It's really showing his size over this puny guy. And we're feeling the chest and torso and everything lift up and twist back with that arm before it whips forward. And look at this one frame. So you can feel this twist here to go for that slash. And then in one frame, it just jumps from this anticipation where it's been hanging back to hitting this character. And he is mush, right? Just one frame it jumps, one frame he's gone, and we got smears to kind of lead the eye through those jumps. There's also the blood. And I love that all they do here is that he just collapses down like a big, heavy character's anticipation usually takes a while, right? And then once that weight follows through, it needs a second to settle that motion. So you see it drop down with a lot of weight, and then there is even some rocking forward with this as it rotates to the other side. Right? So it hits pretty hard that way. That energy follows through into the cut here. Some cool close-up moments. You could do things like this with your characters, depending on what shot you're doing. Maybe they do have a prop that's worth zooming in on. And here we're seeing her pistol activate with that energy traveling down the barrel to the crystal, charging up. So the camera just follows all of that and then pulls back, right? That could be a very slick way of introducing your character or something else that's as important in the scene. So it pulls back, we get that nice framing, and they're doing this thing constantly throughout Arcane, which I think is part of what makes it feel very anime to me, right? You're getting this blown out color frame that's just mainly for impact, right? Sometimes they'll do this in black and white. Sometimes they'll do this with color. You see this with anime quite a bit. And this is something that you can do easily with inside of Maya. A few of you are aware I've told you about just using a cube and filling the whole screen with that color, right? You can give a cube a little bit of transparency, but you make that cube, blue like this, fill the frame, and then boom, you've got that one flash frame effect. And you could 2D this in with, however you want to do it. Grease pencil, blue pencil, whatever. You could take it into Blender even, or elsewhere. But that does a lot to add impact to this gunshot. And like I said, throughout Arcane, there's a lot of punches and hits that do that sort of thing. And you can see that again here. You get this nice flash frame, which is a pretty cool way, I think, to show it's almost like that electricity flowing through his body. Again, very, very clear. Wind up this way to come across the other. And then you can see right here, I don't know if you caught this when it was playing. You get that flash frame silhouette where everything is red and then he's in black except for his eyes and teeth, which is pretty terrifying. Intensifies for the next frame. And then inverts. So when we play it, it's almost like that shock horror. It feels like we got electrocuted with horror right through there. That's the effect you're getting out of it, right?
You really are.
Big fat hero.
You really are.
Big
This is a fun little moment here too for acting again.
You really are. You really are.
big fat
We can tell that she's not too happy about being a hero because why?
You really are.
big fat hero.
Just the little head shake at the beginning.
Really are.
Big
Just the attitude on her face.
Yeah, okay, so the pose of her face and her head shake,
big
and also the dismissive reaction to this whole thing, right?
You really are.
big
You really are.
big fat hero.
So notice that the head shake isn't massive, but we feel all of that. She stays in this attitude pretty much the whole time. So you're working within the pose. She's not moving about the room doing 20 different things. They're just doing this very contained. I want you to pay attention to me getting my weapon ready and then shooing off people I care about to safety. I'm annoyed to be doing this, but this is what I want you to focus on. That lets us zero in on it, that she's not moving around too much and sells the attitude. And then there's this fun thing that happens right here with the camera, which you may not have noticed.
Really are.
Big fat hero.
There's this punch in right there on the camera right before she says hero, right? It's like driving home the audio for you. The intent behind all this is that she is being a hero, right? And that's, if you've watched this, that may be why you feel like she's been very heroic this season, right? On top of other reasons.
I just want to like mention like the nose folds, like the acting there, like the tension is so good here, and like Alicia as well earlier.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, that looks cinematic, yeah. Not too much going on animation wise here, right? I mean, we can feel this motion here. We can feel that there is a little bit of sway with that gun, so it feels believable. It doesn't feel like she's frozen. But a lot of I think what makes these shots cool is the camera work and, you know, the cinematography here. Like, you got one cool pose, one cool moment, you got all these pretty effects and lighting and coloring that just really blow this out of the water.
It's interesting that it's framed to cross over her arm and the gun, so she's like hiding behind the gun, as opposed to like if you have like your true heroic shot, it's like you're on the open side of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd be more like over here, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this kind of shows like where she is mentally.
It's a little bit more defensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that because the whole thing might be really simple, but it's just not in the head. I think she's kind of crazy and she's kind of saying fragile for everything that happened to her, but she's willing to do whatever crazy thing to defeat this thing, and she's kind of almost complaining about the gun as this thing's not working. It's like I'm gonna shot again. But it has a lot going on mentally, you know.
Yeah.
What he's saying, like she's behind the gun, like, yeah, I have to do it again. It's all that is there, like really, really good, really good.
Yeah. Story takes precedence. It's bigger than animation, right? Story matters more. So I think at least you have a good show or a good movie or whatever. That should be what dictates everything. So what you're animating, how it's being animated is really coming down to the character of the story. What do we need to drive home in this scene, in this moment? And I think they do a good job with that for sure. And this is pretty sweet through here. You're getting those flashes again to just add those impact between the blasts. And I think it makes it a little bit more intense before she gets hit as well. And I like that we have this moment where we can very clearly see that she's not running from the fight, but then she got really defensive and almost surprised that this thing has gone through all the blasts to get her. And then this very cinematic moment happens here, which is just poster frame, right? Here again, these are things that you could do with inside of Maya, no problem, where, you know, you create a couple of frames of this. If you wanted to have the eye get drawn towards a weapon or something else and you want to use light, maybe there's an explosion, whatever it is, you can use the light and the motion to kind of pull you in. which is what this is doing here. And just, you know, fractions of a second to get you to zero in on this. And then we're looking at all those cool lightning effects and like that pulse in and out of the crystal glowing. And just a very cool set of poses between these two characters, right? The line of action is very clear, I would say, right? Like everything is like pointing back at each other, back and forth. You're not looking anywhere else. And you still are getting movement between the characters. So they're still thinking about, you know, we're keeping this rotation here, that foot moving. We're having his jaws open up. All that stuff is still there, keeping the characters alive. And I think often when I see animators do these like slow-mo moments, they forget some of these parts to keep them moving and to keep them moving maybe at different rates for your timing and spacing, right? So even though you're doing slow-mo and you got more frames, I would still stay true to the speed of the motion. Like in the middle of the move, you're faster and then you're slowing down, right? So you can still have that in your slow-mo depending on what kind of slow-mo it's going to be. Here's another overlooked scene, perhaps, but this might be a shot that you have on the job, right? I think this scene's quite interesting because, you know, if you're thinking about animating this shot from scratch, you're like, Savika's holding the kid and is going to run out the door to take her to safety, and we need you to animate that. What do you think of doing in this scene, right? What are you going to get right body mechanics wise, posing wise? What needs to happen with both the characters to help convey what's going on in the scene? And I think this is what blows it over the top for me, is where she reaches out and looks over because the kid is very concerned for Jinx, right? That's what it's all about. And that's the very cool secondary action on top of this. So not only are we nailing the body mechanics here, where we're lifting up with a hip, turning around, planting the foot, tilting that hip rotation, doing all the stuff we learn in a walk cycle. And like, you see that overlap? Ah, that's why we harp on that too. Yeah. It wasn't for nothing. I don't torture you guys for nothing. Right? So all that's in there, but there's also that fun secondary action bit of, yeah, we're gonna get this overlap in there with the kids, so it feels like the kids along for this ride, and just I think the pull on this is really important too. Getting the body mechanics down to feels like the kid is pulled away, right? We really feel that stretch in that arm. It's like you can tell the kid doesn't want to go. The kid's almost ready to sacrifice themselves for Jinx, right? Boom, boom, boom. For those of you who know the story. Pretty cool overlooked shot, perhaps, with all the other coolness going on in here. And then that's amplified all through there. This is a really interesting way to, like, they're using a smear here to zip her off to the side, right? And this could very well just be something that like the effects team put in there, and you just like the animator just pushed the character off to the side and maybe had a bit of hair overlap. What are the few things they could control maybe to get that working? But what happens after this smear is we're suddenly replaced in that almost like that full frame of color, the other character then suddenly being in front of us, right? And there's this, it gives you this blazing fast effect that she was attacked very quickly, even though we could see this moment up close that she almost got hit. So we get that slow-mo and then it zips back to speed here. And then you get this really awesome settle with Warwick here, right? He doesn't come in like perfectly straight and just kind of slide to a stop that way. There's all that follow through with the energy going into this rotation back and forth through his body as that happens, and him actually trying to throw the claws down to catch himself. and then charge ahead and change direction. Things like this are really cool. We'll see this fairly frequently as well with more clips we look at. But like here, it might be a little confusing at how we end up at this perspective, because it feels like we're looking at her more profile, and all of a sudden we're here, and there's a lot of like camera stuff going on with the shake. She really is just moving close to camera, completely changing her direction on us. And I think using that 3D space, so if you start out far away, you start with maybe your profile, and then you end up over the shoulder, and you end up close to camera, we really feel like this world is alive, and they're moving around in this world when you do those sorts of perspective changes for the audience. On top of all the other things we've been seeing, right? This wind up blast. Yeah, then there's these really cool frames here where they're doing a little bit differently the flash impact frames, where you get the white and then the inverse for these hits, these slow motion moments. But those are some big takeaways for me through this section. Hopefully that's been interesting and enlightening for you guys. Cool. Let's take a look at this one then.
Navigate it.
I have my sketches.
This form is your base, child. Your eyes see what others don't. Might. Bending your environment to your will. Your speed is improving, but eventually you need force.
Too much force exposes you to risk.
Indeed. The last is guile, phantoms, tricksters, mages, absent honor, absent accountability. Remember this, Caitlyn. Tunnels in your eyes, lava in your veins, shadows in your heart. This is the truth of combat.
Why does she feel stronger in this fight? Not just that she wins.
She's
'Cause
always
she's-
like,
yeah.
Her head is always higher than Caitlyn's too. Like, so her stance, even in that scene where it's paused, is up, where Caitlyn's is back, and her the stick is pointing towards Caitlyn a little, just subtly, it was a little bit higher, and it's more horizontal, where Caitlyn's is like pointing towards the ground. And she has like a more imposing stance.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more solid. Like she's more grounded. Like Caitlyn is kind of more fluid and kind of bounces around a bit, where she's more like a rock, and like all of her movements are very purposeful and conservative. You know, like she moves what she has to move, and that's it. There's not as much overlap. You know, it's just kind of, you know, it's that brute force strength of, you know, all the movements are snappy.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, you've got your slow in and your slow out, and like a frame or two in between, where it's just versus Caitlyn's more fluid kind of approach to it, at least on watching it the one time.
Yeah. So I think I think both of those points are on the money. I think she Ambessa here is this is Ambessa, by the way. She is definitely a lot more conservative in her motion, as she doesn't move so much. To me, Caitlyn feels more frantic and or off balance in her motion, and that's what you would see with, you know, when we watch real fighters. If we see someone who's a veteran, or if we see someone who's a veteran, not even just fighting, but in anything, you know, a pro will do only what they need to know. They'll know exactly the amount of pressure to apply, right? They'll have precision with everything. It's kind of like, even with like I saw this really adorable video of puppies once running for their dinner, and how they would slide into the kitchen and then try to change direction to run down the tile to get to the food, and all the puppies would like fly into the wall and like bounce to the other wall as they were trying to change momentum and go straight. And the mother would come in, and then you would just see none of that. She wouldn't collide into the wall or anything. She would be a lot more direct with all of her movements, much more in control, right? So I think that's important to note and to think about when you have two characters that are fighting. You know, you can convey their differences in their body size and weight and ability, as well as their like experience level and things that they can do, by choosing how they move to be a little bit different. That's maybe a higher level thing to be concerned about, but that should hopefully be something that you reach one day, where if you're doing a two character fight scene, or even if you're just showing one character off, you want them to feel a certain way. You want Spider-Man to feel a certain way, Batman to feel a certain way, right?
I would say that Caitlyn is like much more emotional than Ambessa, and that's also put something in her movement.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's part of it too, right? An experienced person is not going to be so nervous or emotionally flustered. Um, you know, when she steps into this, she really hits this position and holds it, and you see that Tessa, or not Tessa, you see Caitlyn, just kind of ricochets off of her, like her staff folds inward here, and she follows through past it and kind of get rocks around. And from holding this position, you know, Ambessa just kind of shoves with her arm, and then she's off, right? She's very much in control of the situation, and has this quick attack. And this has stuff that we talk about all the time when we're getting into baseball throws or punches or whatever it is, where we're really getting that hip going, taking off, that chest twisting, and that weapon or prop or whatever it is dragging behind. And you get that smear frame to help you with the spacing here, to basically make that swipe super fast, right? We really only slow down like over here. And we can, even though we can't see that tip of that weapon anymore that was striking, we can see that her body, and the staff really slow down in this moment. And you can see right before this, or in the middle of the swipe rather, there isn't much motion going on in that chest and that hip through there. She's pretty much already where she needs to be, and this is all following through, right? So that's what's giving that plenty of impact. And then here's another moment which really stood out to me in this training fight, where I just thought that's cool, where she goes and swipes this leg very frantically, and she just kind of casually lifts it off the floor. It almost feels like a subtle dance step, right? She doesn't rush anywhere. She doesn't take a big step. Just kind of like, I'll lift my foot a few inches off the floor. Yeah.
It's like she's just expecting that already. She knows the game already. I mean,
Yeah, she knows where the move is headed.
yeah.
And like this is something that like I've seen a lot of you guys do, is a scene like this where we're profile and we're seeing the two characters come at each other. So another important thing that I want to highlight here is what makes this very cinematic is the fact that we're cutting, and we're having these cuts of like we're overhead, and then we're doing a close up of the face, and then we're seeing the other character close up, right? So those are the things that are making it feel a lot more dynamic than if it was just profile the whole time. It would feel a lot flatter, right? But these shots, it's not like these shots are harder. In fact, I think when you're not profile and you're this close up, you got a lot less to worry about usually, right? There's a lot less to do. This is mainly just for that dynamic effect, and there are these really cool shots of the staff being super close to camera and then shooting far away, and obviously we're looking up at Ambessa here, right? And we're looking a little bit more straight on to Caitlyn. So that there again, that power dynamic is shown. And she's quite literally been yanking and pushing her around the room.
I think they also do the trick, like if you watch like specifically Japanese martial arts movies, they'll do the thing where in the wide you see the contact and then it'll cut to the close up and you see the contact a second time.
Mm-hmm.
And it adds a lot of weight to the hit, where like in American action scenes you would usually like never quite see the impact, and it just doesn't feel as heavy of a hit when you do it that way.
Yeah. I mean I've seen a fair amount of Western movies that it almost makes one punch feel like it was 2 or 3 punches, which it can be overkill when they're doing that many cuts of the same punch. But I think to your point, if they're doing the one angle and then especially if the cinematography is not smooth, what you get is maybe too much of a shaky camera or whatever it is, and you miss the action.
Yeah.
So you miss the impact. You're like, wait, what happened? Did they get hit? You're more confused than you are along for the ride. So yeah, I think in terms of like Eastern movies, that would be a lot more clear. And actually, the master of clear action movies is Jackie Chan, right? Like you watch his movies and you can clearly see the whole fight. So that's definitely a style thing to consider. I like here how Ambessa 2 has got, we're getting some nice line of action through the body in these poses. And she's very clearly got like this squash here. We all could benefit by getting more squash and stretch contrast from our poses, right? We got this very clear line of action there, and then we got this squash here. And you can feel how she really steps into this and stretches out a bit right there. And then that follow through with the arms as well. I think adds a lot to the thrusting attack. Now to the point of getting to the point of the throw here, I think this is a fun bit where they chose to have her staff get caught, and then she already knew it was coming, so she's ready. I probably would have tilted that hip more. But she gets the leg up high, and we get this close up for impact. So that's, I think, to your point, Matt, right? Close up to make, it's almost like a pop visually because we get this close up, and then there's the snap. I do love that, this detail is in there. The power of that and her weight being far forward then pulls her forward. So she has to follow through. She has to get back into balance, and that weight has to get pulled forward from that impact. For the throw,
I was gonna say
Mhm.
this feels very Neo versus Morpheus.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, and they almost feel like they're in a dojo. That's a good point.
Lava in your veins.
This throw, I mean, a lot of this is
In your heart.
we're not seeing 50 frames of like characters flipping and throwing each other over shoulders here. We're just getting that close up of her stepping into her space and pulling her over her shoulder. And then we get that cut. And that slow-mo to really read this moment. We get tons of hang time where that spacing is really hanging out there for that flip over the shoulder. And then I think we're going back to Matt's point of like having that cut, the close-up again, just adding an impact. This helps too. Like we gotta space this properly for her to hit. But what do we call how she's getting hit right now? What's really adding even more impact to that?
Overlap?
No. There is overlap though. There's overshoot.
Oh, that's what I meant
He
by
hits
overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost said it starts with an O, but I thought that would be too much of a giveaway. Yeah, so she hits and bounces back, right? That whiplash effect adds a lot more to that hit than if she just kind of hit there and stayed, right? And yeah, this is really to Matt's point, right? We're getting like 50 cuts of her hitting the floor, boom, 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 right? Several times. So that is how we're getting the impact out of this. We really feel the hang time, and then this just really speeds it up into the floor to make it feel even faster. This is that continuation of the same shot that was probably done all the way to this in one clip, and then they just intercut it.
I like that her legs like flip over, like it really that like the arc over the big woman's shoulder, and how it whips her legs, like that continued motion like across her body in like a really uncomfortable direction, I think really helps sell it too. Because like when the feet have further to go, they have to whip a lot faster.
Yep. Yeah, and so often they're very far behind and they've got to really catch up. And here you've got the whole mass, the main mass has now almost come to a stop. So this just really whips through like a baseball pitch with an arm, very important point. Definitely got to have that overlap in those arms. This is where you're just like pushing all of that stuff as much as you can. And the more that you push it, the better it'll feel for your impact, right? It's not just like this rotation either. There's a turn to those legs, right? You could feel it come out here and then come in as she recovers. So I think there's a lot to take away from that clip.
I was going to say that something really cool too is that at the end, even though she threw her on the floor and all that, she's still fighting the moment because she's trying to get up. And nobody that do that kind of thing, they secure you on the floor like that. She's trying to make the point, hey, this is because of this. She's trying to hold the neck and hold the arm and still talking to her, and the other one is trying to fight the thing. It's a situation there that it's not just throw them on the floor and say, hey, that's what you deserve. No, it's still something going on there.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's really cool. Mm-hmm. Because she's still, the head is off. She's still trying to get up.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, as someone who's being annoyed their teacher is winning in the fight, right? You've seen this in movies before that are like, I don't want to lose, and they're just getting bullied around essentially. I think that's a good call story-wise. Let's switch gears from all this fighting stuff and look at some of this dance animation.
I just wanted to say that the thing with animation that is amazing compared with real people acting is that they might film something and something happened in that shot and they say, oh, that's cool, that happened. But in animation, everything is meant. Whatever movement, whatever reaction, whatever face, whatever is meant to be. I mean, it's you have to put
it has to be thought out. Although there is that moment of spontaneity for us with shooting reference, or even thumbnailing stuff, you know, the idea might come to us and then we test it out in the planning phase. You know, it could come up in blocking too, or blocking plus. We get the idea late and then we think it's worth putting in. So there are those moments of like intuition or lightning striking where it's like, hey, this might be a good thing to throw in there. But yeah, I generally animation is a lot more planned. Actors are in the moment only. That's what I think. That's what makes animation so intense, right? Like if we're doing a very emotional acting scene, for instance, we've got to stay in that moment for like months sometimes. That's a lot to handle depending on what your shot is, right? There's a Pixar animator who talked about you know, I think the parents dying scene in Finding Nemo, and he talked about like thinking about all of the loved ones that he's lost in his life, just think to empathize with the moment and get the acting to pour through. And he was like, it's just too much to hold on to that for like an entire month while I'm working on the shot. So yeah, we've got to compartmentalize those things and plot it out a lot more logically. I think the actor does it for like, you know, they do like 20 takes in like 10 minutes or something. They're like, okay, I think we got it.
Pire chose qui m'est arrivée, ce jour où je t'ai rencontré, j'aurais peut-être préféré que ce jour ne soit jamais arrivé. La pire des bénédictions, la plus belle des malédictions. De toi je devrais m'éloigner, mais comme dit le dicton, plutôt qu'être seul, mieux vaut être mal accompagné. Tu sais ce qu'on dit, sois près de tes amis les plus chers, mais aussi
Encore plus près de tes adversaires.
mais ma meilleure ennemie c'est toi. Fuis-moi, le pire c'est toi et moi.
Mais si tu cherches encore à voir, oublie-moi. Le pire c'est toi et moi. Some night.
It's beautiful.
Where'd you learn those moves?
I was just following your lead.
He's got lines.
Hey, I just want to thank you. You know, for everything. I used to dream the Undercity could be like this. But somewhere, I got consumed by all the ways it wasn't. I gave up on it. Gave up on you.
I've never seen you give up on anything, Ekko.
You ever wish you could just stay in one moment?
Sometimes taking a leap forward means leaving a few things behind.
I promise I'll never forget this.
You better not.
Sorry,
No, it's fine.
Can we just pretend like it's the first time?
So I'll clip it there so we can dive in. Sophia, you wanted to look at this one in particular. Was there anything you wanted to zero in on?
First of all, this one is like the dance scene is one of my favorite in this show. And I love how they make the movements simple, but at the same time they feel so organic, especially for Powder. She moves like it reminds me a snake movements. I don't know, but it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is really the overlap. I have no doubt that there is like, I mean, this show in general is like heavily referenced, right? Like the acting bits, I'm sure there's plenty of dance and action reference that they've done as well. And I think that that's invaluable in getting a lot of those ideas and movements that we've been looking at. So basically, they're on, I think it's fives here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a little longer. You go to the actual dance moves, a little easier to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So that's more than we would frequently get in like the Spider-Verse, where it's animated on 2s. So that gives us an even more, I would say, like dream-like quality here. I think it's very interesting story-wise to intercut this dance that is on 5s with their dialogue here, which is back at normal speed. I think that makes this moment more intense, more meaningful, and the choice to put it on 5s makes it like ultra slow-mo, almost like the way I interpret it, maybe you guys have a different interpretation. The way I interpret it is it's almost like time froze for them and they really soaked that moment in and forgot about the rest of the world. So I think that's the impression that it gives you. Like we don't see anyone else anyway in this moment. And I think it makes for the show how quick the story was going. I think this was very economic in like developing their relationship, and then to like having that deep conversation they were having kind of intercut right after this. I think it was a very effective way of handling the sequence and introducing this, and again giving us a break from the action and letting the character develop, which was nice.
I saw this theory that it's kind of Ekko's memories, and as he has this ability to return back in 4 seconds, and it's like return back in 4 frames. Like it's related. It's a theory from TikTok. I'm not sure.
Well, we know TikTok is the source of all facts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's deep. I mean, we can see from the show that he can go back with his device like 4 seconds, but he literally goes back. And this feels more like just they're remembering, and we are getting to kind of see what happened at the same time that their conversation is happening. So I think maybe they're having the memory of it all as they're talking. I don't personally think it's got to do with his abilities, but I also don't know the games. Maybe there's more to the lore than I'm aware of.
I really think that they did all this to humanize her again, like to make her be lovable somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have that memory because she split at the moment. She was a little girl. She split with the other guy that raised her pretty much. Yeah. And at some point, I mean, I watched the whole thing. At some point, I was hating this Jinx. I mean, I was like, I hate this little girl. She was a character that everybody has in their life that comes always and ruin the party or do something like that. And all this humanize her again and make her lovable and you like her again. She's a hero again, and it's really cool how they made our minds go to whatever they want with the story and all that.
I mean, that's our job. The animators, everyone's working together to push the narrative. Right, like that moment, like I said, where she's got the gun out and then the camera punches in right before she says hero. Like all of that is subliminal messaging to be like, think of her as the hero. They certainly made me empathize with her a lot with all of she has a lot of really important scenes where she suffers and sacrifices and love and stuff. I'll ask you guys this. Did you empathize more with her or Vi? Out of curiosity.
At some point, I lost her. I lost the interest in her a little bit. This kind of girl that is the villain, but she had a lot of contradictions. She has some kind of good things still in her, but she's so awful at the same time. I think you sympathize more with that than Vi. Vi at some point was being lame already. Yeah.
I think Vi came across as a lot more two-dimensional. Like I don't think she has this range and depth to her arc, her story, at least this season. So as an interesting side note, all of her movement here has a lot of great overlap. I mean, we're getting all of the, you know, the arcs and the hips as they swing forward and back in like that figure 8. And on top of that, you're getting different things leading and following. So this arm really kicks out, and then the rest of her body follows through after that kick out, which is they do this over and over again. You know, these kinds of snaky like moves. This is why you're feeling that, right? You're feeling this arm push out, and then the rest of her body follow through into that. And a lot of dance moves do those things. So you get one part of the body leading, and then the rest follows through. And so that's why she has this really nice like swaying back and forth feeling. We're getting those figure 8s and that lead and follow through there. Really well done. Because it's on 5s, I wonder how they executed it. I feel like they could have just animated this at normal speed and then just chopped it up, like held the frames.
Yeah, because it still has the motion blur.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still, and you know, the camera's still moving, the background's still moving, but I feel like you could cheat that easy enough with some camera parenting too, to keep that still moving and basically animate this like on normal speed. I think it'd be a little weird to animate on 5s throughout the whole thing. So be curious if there's any behind the scenes of whoever worked on this sequence. But I certainly think it brings the tenderness to it all. I love too the even this. Right? What are we feeling here? Awe, maybe some excitement because of it. I think it's really well done, right? Like it's subtle stuff, but we read it all. Right? So I want you guys to never forget that. Like we're always looking here. You know, we're always trying to read what's going on in the face, what someone else is thinking, the character that we're watching. And so we pick up on the smallest things, and we might know how they're feeling and not knowing exactly why that happens in terms of animation, like what we need to move to make that happen. So what I like is, you know, the eyes are poppy as they should be, because eyes are very poppy, where they snap to a position and then they kind of hold. Let me go back. They snap to this position, and they hold, and then they
even when they're holding, there's like a very, very like pixel level quiver to them. Yep. Like energy, like with like, especially like once they land and he sees her, like there's like this almost like very slight quiver to show that excitement.
Yeah. I think also just to show that our eyes aren't perfectly still. And that's a degree of like polish that you could go and put into your work. I don't think I'd ever block that stuff. You could like block out where the eyes are going to go, and then when you get much more in detail and things are solidified, then you could add those little bits of tremble or little bits of shake or whatever to the body. But we see those eyes kind of snap there and then snap over to notice her, and there's that slight head turn, right, which shows a lot more interest to what's going on over there. And then it's that extra head turn and that slight shift in expression. We get slight opening in the eyes. We can see those eyebrows like lift up, right? We can feel the tension go from like pushing in here, where he's kind of like happily jamming to the music, and it relaxes a bit before they go up. And then we can feel all those same things here in the cheeks subtly and in the mouth, right? That she's here, right? So one day you might need to animate a shot that's got a close-up where this stuff matters, or even if it's not a close-up and you're just holding a character, these are the little things that you can do that will really direct our attention and tell us what's going on in their head and emotionally in the scene, because that's what matters. Look at how subtle those mechanics are. Lean to the side, put the weight here to step through the crowd. Step over here. Look at that. That overlap is there, right? We don't hear it. We don't feel that head hit a wall. Just feels smooth, even though it's a slow, casual step. Going to some of the conversational stuff.
I just want to thank you, for everything. I used to dream the understand.
So
I just want to thank you.
what do you notice about this scene? Is there anything that stands out to you? Like, if you had to animate this, is there anything that surprises you that they did here?
The look away is good.
For everything.
Do you like the idea that he's looking at her and then he looks away? I love the little shoulder shrug here, and this like head tilt off to the side. If he was just looking at her the whole time, not really having those little body motions in there, I think he would come across as pretty flat, and I don't think you would have any of the kind of anxious energy. It can be difficult for us to convey some deep emotions for someone that we care about to their face, right? So I think him looking away and kind of doing his little shrug and stuff, that's like him with his body trying to manage that emotion and still get the point out. It feels a little anxious because of that. I
just want to thank
like he's wrestling with a few things. And all this stuff is still there too. Like mechanically, we've got this like lean in and that lean away with weight.
I just want to thank you, for everything.
Like, especially like this sway, you could really feel that how it swings over to this side with weight. We don't it doesn't floatily get there, even though these are all very small moves, right? I don't think a shot like this is something that's extremely difficult for any of you. I think you're all capable of doing shots like this if you wanted. Some of you would veer away from doing acting, but there might be a game emote or a VFX moment where you need to kind of sell some of this stuff someday. But I think this isn't too difficult. It's maybe a little bit more zeroed in than you're used to thinking, granular when you're thinking about these little shifts and everything. But it's the same as doing a shot with broader action body mechanics. You still need to have everything in there. And then the deeper layer, of course, the acting is like, what is their emotional state? How do I sell that with those movements? And I think his like looking at her, squinting, and then like looking off and then turning away, all of that really is quite useful in conveying that. Now this shot just to as a final note about the acting here.
Up on anything, Ekko.
You ever wish you could just stay in one moment?
We feel everything here just with the eyes, because that's like we don't see the mouth, we don't know what the lip sync is, we barely even see their faces, but all that body rocking back and forth with the head and slight adjustment in the neck and chest is helping to sell that dialogue that he's talking, that slight movement forward, those head tilts, and the eyebrows are doing a lot of work here to like hit the accents.
I wish you could just
stay, right? It gets really like big there
in one moment.
And then just shrinks back down. So I think that's very interesting, right? So you can literally use just what you have here to sell the dialogue, even though we're not seeing the mouth to see the dialogue. And that just shows you how important this is. to have in your acting scenes.
Taking a leap forward means leaving a few things behind.
Really like I obsess about things like this too when I'm thinking about acting and facial animation, like the eyelids coming down mid-sentence where she has this pause, right? To me, that conveys a little bit more of her thought along with like everything else that's going on in her face. But I like that like little flick of the eyelids before she finishes her thought. You can see the eye darts off slightly there too. We read that. And then of course you've got the eyebrows accenting all of these little head nods that we read, right? These little lifts up and lift down here with those eyebrows going up and down to match it with overlap.
Promise.
Giving it that fleshy feel. It's giving those accents some power as she speaks. And then, shoulder shrug, a little bit of like leaning into him. A lot of good stuff there.
Why just me? Why not save all of them?
It wasn't a decision. One moment you're addressing the council and the next we're standing in rubble. I didn't have any greater awareness.
How can I know you aren't lying to me?
Why would you think I am?
Because you used me and Viktor for Hex Tech. You called us investments.
Two brilliant young inventors who shared a penchant for impossible surprises, carrying magic from myth to machine, rallying the hope and hearts of a nation. You were a wise investment.
This is your obsession. Everything you've done to these people, you did alone.
The Arcane stirs within you.
Viktor, for all our sakes, stay away from the Hex Gates.
Your mind has become rigid, Jace. Fear clouds your judgment. This chain of events started with you. In my confusion, I was unable to reconcile this.
A lot of cool things going on here. A lot of things that some of what we've covered. But I'll turn this over to you guys as you watch this. Was there anything that you caught that you were like, man, I'd like to put that in my own work? How did they do that?
One of the things that really stood out, and I mean, we get this in every shot, but just how differently all three characters move in the scene.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
Like the puppet is almost like a ballerina.
Yeah.
And Jace is more like, more physical and everything. And then Viktor inside of the puppet is very kind of ethereal, like the hair kind of coming around. Like you get like a very different feel for each of the three characters, like the movement and everything else.
They feel unique. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like even that where like the hand cradles the jaw is like very gentle almost.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's one big takeaway I have from you know, I've seen animation of the League of Legends games, and all of their characters always feel different, right? Every character feels unique the way they're animated, and I think that's something they've carried over to the show, and that's I think you kind of have to with how well that game is animated. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it justice. There's a lot of weight conveyed too with Jace, with not just his brutishness, but like how he drags that axe or hammer or whatever you want to call it.
I like the camera work in this moment, like from the first person, then again the third person, like the changes in perspective.
Mm-hmm. There are those impact frames again. Close up and then back. There's a few times throughout the show where I get bothered by where I think there's almost too many cuts. And I have issues with sometimes the cinematography breaking the 180 rule too much, where I get disjointed along with those cuts. It makes, I think, some scenes a little bit more confusing than they need to be. It almost feels like a way to, I don't know, keep things intense the whole time. And I don't think it was like necessary to cut so much to keep it as interesting. I like this moment here too. Like, you want someone to feel very robotic. Hey, you guys know how to do that. You set 2 keyframes. This robot rotates up, and this arm just comes right up and doesn't move, right? Once it gets there, right? It eases in. And then meanwhile, you've got the very human feeling character who's flailing around and overlapping, right? You get this kick out, and you can feel the spine working to try to get out of this grip. Right.
I also noticed that the hammer in the Jace's hands is like looks very heavy, but then this robot grabs it. It grabs it really like it's a
paperweight. It's like
yeah.
Yeah.
And even though it's you know, coming up, you know, very robotically, there's still a weight shift as Jace is moving around. You can see just subtle movements in the balance of the puppet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just enough there so it's not quite completely like non-organic, right? But you distinctly feel the difference between them. One moment where when I watch the show, this part, like you know, it was giving me the vibe that yeah, he's lost a little bit from he's going a little crazy, and then he shoots this thing, but like this 180 flip really lost me in the moment. I was like, wait, what just happened? Like this got very busy for me. And I was like, what did he do? What did he shoot? Why did he shoot it? I was really like confused and didn't realize it was just an angry outburst so much that was trying to hit. I didn't pick up on the robot the first time at all that was there. And even now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, wait, so was the point of this that he was losing it and needed to shoot at the column, or were they going for that he noticed the robot? Because I don't think he should have noticed it if he was losing it in that moment from the fractured memories that he has, those disturbing memories. So that was one moment where the cinematography got a little crazy. I think it's good to call out where it's working really well and where it isn't. So you guys, if you're doing those dynamic shots, can apply that best. We'll look here at one of the opening fights for the show. a lot of cool things here. Here, you know, you got a character that's jumping. It's very easy just to, you know, forget your arcs even in moments like this. But you can clearly see that arc is there with her, and they're letting her drop without the camera really, like the camera doesn't lead this, right? She comes down, she goes past the camera, and then the camera tries to catch up. It catches her hair here, and they do a camera cut in the middle of that move, which pops it back so we can see her landing, which is an interesting choice. But those are things that are on the table for you when you're crafting a shot that's, you know, got these dynamic moments in there. And you'll see this again and again, that they'll cut in the middle of the action because that makes for a smoother transition for you to follow what's going on, right? It's a little bit jarring for me to watch this because it comes so close, gets so blurry, and then all of a sudden we seem to pop back so much without that blur. And she's a little bit more to the left now, so but you know, we can catch up fairly quickly with those things. A lot of times you'll see those cuts happen anyway in shows and movies, even though they're not the smoothest. I love the use of the camera punch out here as she fires the minigun. It pushes the camera back essentially because it's so powerful, and then you get these effects for the blasts. And obviously there's a bit of a delay here, so we have time to see Vi slamming this shield down here to block the hits. But I love the, you know, the slam down has weight, doesn't ease into the floor. All that basic stuff is there that we never want to forget in our animations. And like, you know, it's rotating from the hit. It may not be moving a whole lot here, but it's rotating from it. And she's trying to push against it, and it's a rotation this way. And then, you know, she's really loses here, and you get this awesome impact where this thing forces her back, right? In one frame, we just shove the shield back, and we make her whole body get smashed up against it, which gives it a lot of impact. And then you do this, right? And then that hits even harder, right? It's like, wow, she's really going through hell here. And the whole time she's slightly sliding now. She's lost and she's just surviving at the moment unless she comes up with a plan, in which case she does. And she, after these close-ups, she ends up punching this thing out towards her. I love the mechanics here of like her weight going over onto this leg while slinging this minigun and then having to dodge out of the way. Get your squash and stretch in there along with all that. Great lines of action. She's swinging this minigun around, and then you get a cut again in the middle of that swing. And I think this is another one of those jarring 180s. You know, for those of you who don't know, when you've got a camera pointed in a direction, right? There's a range of motion, a rule with camera work, that everything stays pretty clear within these 180 degrees, right? But if you flip the camera to the other side, if suddenly you're pointing this way instead of at this line the whole time, it takes a lot longer for our eyes to adjust where we are and what's going on. And this is another one of those 180s where she's a little bit smaller in frame. She feels a little bit more that way in frame. And we flipped it, and I got too jarred, I think, for this moment than it necessarily had to be. There is a flow to it that feels nice. I think the rhythm is good in the way that she shoots, dodges here, and then rotates there, and then we get that camera cut. I think rhythmically it's nice, especially since that whole action is fast, and then there's a slow-mo. And I think they're really fantastic throughout the show of having these fast, and then slow-mo and a nice rhythm within like what they're doing. Like if they're gonna do 3 or 4 punches, it's boom, 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 right? And there's just almost like a musicality to how those moves connect. and the camera supports that with everything that it's doing. So the rhythm feels good, and I think that really adds to the appeal. And that is, again, high level stuff that you want to get to with your mechanics whenever you're doing your action scenes. And here we've got, again, great use of the space to have the blast fill the frame. That adds the intensity for it to really just be right up on us. The other interesting thing here that happens not so often in the show is the camera gets omnipotent here. It's no longer following something, and it's just rotating around them to see the whole fight, which adds a sort of like gravitas to this moment, I would say, between the two of them, that it's very epic. It's letting us read the whole thing very clearly, than being character driven. And this is another story moment, of course. They're seeing each other through the splitting weapon, right? There's a wedge between them, and they're being torn apart by their fight. I think that's all wonderful stuff. Great body mechanics here too for like throwing this weapon up. Stuff that we talk about all the time, right? That wave in the body. Really adds to the believability that she can throw a little rocket launcher out of sight. I'm gonna look at the something from first season here.
Vi?
You filthy traitor.
Vander had his chance. I see you never learn patience.
Okay, so there are some things that we haven't talked here about today. A couple cool things of note. I like the cinematography here. I like this is all fun. The way that the camera goes above and then back to the side. That's very like dynamic.
The traitor.
Vander.
Did you know how to notice here how you can really hear her say Vander with like intensity?
Vander.
Like a lot of that is the timing and spacing on like the jaw there. So you're doing the same thing that you would do in the rest of the body and the face for like those moments of weight and intensity. The other thing that I think is fun here is there, like, to give this a little bit more intensity, I feel the whole face like slide a bit in this moment. Like it can't go anywhere this way, but it can go this way.
Vander.
And you can feel a little bit of a tremble here in the face as well, like almost like she's pressing against it, and I think she's got a bit of a tremble as well. So there's that polish in there that's really adding to this moment, and those things that they're doing with the whole head and the jaw and everything to make that dialogue really pop and sing, which is nice. Give these moments some tension where it's a little bit more calm. I love the cinematic deal here where they're using the cape to flip where the camera is on us to cut to new angles. And, you know, it really, we're drawn by where this cape goes because it's the thing that's really moving. And that's what's bringing us into the new cuts as well. Like here, right? We cut into that cape coming in, closing out the frame, and then we're close up, right? And I think that's really nice. I love, this is where I think studying reference pays off too. She didn't just like run straight at her with both of her feet. She's like doing like a sideways hop step. It feels like this is the stance she wants to have to punch with this arm. And I think you only think of those things by studying real fights and people with martial arts skill, because you would see them do moves like this. Like, unless you do that as a hobby, then you innately would be like, yes, of course I would sidestep to throw with this hand rather than turn away and then turn back, right? You have to study reference, right? This moment here always cracks me up too, because I always think of Mission Impossible with Henry Cavill. You know, he's always doing his reloading his arms thing. It's been almost like memed to death. It feels like that's where they maybe got that from. Here, I love her counters. You can really feel the push and pull this fight. I think this fight was clearer to watch than some things in season 2. I love this cheat almost. It feels like her arm is like super long there. Just so that we can kind of read that arc on that hand. And we get some nice impact out of it, of course. Gotta have that impact. And lastly, I mean, well, this pose is rad, right? We really got to read this awesome pose before she hit. Plenty of hang time. That leg kick out before she punches, nice. This is an interesting way of doing the impact frame. So instead of doing the color, they did like a defocus for like a couple of frames and then it snapped back, right? Look at that. Look at that head lead. She got rocked. That's how we feel it, right? The defocus, the spacing, the head lead. And this moment here with the camera, I think was a fun moment to really make this move unique to the fight. Like here, the camera is really following like Vi's rotation situation. So those are some takeaways that we haven't gotten from some of the other clips. Now, with everything that we've covered in mind, let's go take a look at progression here.
Vi?
You filthy traitor.
Vander had his chance. I see you never learned patience.
So why am I showing you the storyboards in Animatic? So that you can see how much has already been worked out for the animator, right? It may not be the case with every scene, every shot in the show, but there's so much cinematography just in this scene alone that has been worked out, and like poses and moves that are like have been a fantastic starting point for the animator, right? Like a lot of the stuff that we were just talking about, like this close up here, grabbing the hair to going to above the characters and then cutting back, like all of that was already there for the animator to just grab and go, right? And follow as a guide, which is huge. Like if I could provide you all with animatics and storyboards for all your shots and just be like, do this camera cut here, put this pose in there, you'd be like, man, animation's awesome. It just works, you know? Like so many problems are done, right? And you guys aren't storyboard artists. You're not meant to be storyboard artists or, you know, doing layout necessarily. You could, but like these skills are useful for you right now because, you know, if you're looking to make an Arcane demo reel or a Spider-Verse demo reel or anything of the sort that might have this cinematic stuff going on, these are the things that you should be thinking about and how you should be thinking about them for your own pieces. So you have to kind of put some of these skills in your wheelhouse so you can prove that, you know, you're capable of animating those things. And then when you're doing it on the job, it won't just be you working out every single problem, right? And not only that, like everyone that's there, the lead, the soup, and everyone will be pushing you to think about this spacing, that rhythm, you know, this pose. Oh, we're going to have a flash frame there. So it'll be, you know, a really strong impact for you. You know, all that stuff will be added in to help amplify your shot and push you to be stronger. So it's not like, you should walk away from this chat expecting to, you know, become an animation god, to try to rival them by putting everything you see in here under the sun, right? The help will be there at the studio to carry you to that next level. If you can walk away with a couple of things that you want to start experimenting and putting into your own work, I think that'll be huge for you, for your shots, for your reel, for your future. And you just keep dabbling, keep putting in that one new thing that you just picked up from studying this, and you can literally do that with any show or game that inspires you. That's what I hope you take away from our frame by frame fun today, is that, you know, the one or two things that you want to start trying and experimenting with, and you can use this as a guide and in some way, shape, or form. Could be acting, could be action shots, whatever it is, you know, whether it's those impact frames overlapping everything a little bit better, having a little bit more lean and follow like we saw with that head turn from the punch, you know, all of that will make massive differences in your shots going forward. Maybe it's worth noting here too how much the effects play a role. Like this is borderline play blast to me, just looking at this, right? And I know that we can have a tendency to also want to have all the pretty effects and shading and lighting and everything in there. But if you've got the story and character working already, you don't need all that stuff, right? That'll add to it, but this is what animators see most of the time. And so that's pretty much all you need on your reel, because that's what they'll be looking at. And they'll want to see the details of like how you're handling everything frame by frame, rather than things that are motion blurred or defocused and everything. You might do that for like one shot or something to just show that you can do those things. But animators like to see all the detail, you know. I mean, just like us when we're frame by framing through stuff, it's kind of annoying if things are too heavily motion blurred and we're like, what's going on in that frame? I don't know what's happened to that spacing of that arm. It's a bummer. Wish you could study that a little better, right?
Yeah, it makes a difference. Like it's really easy to just get lost in the show when you're watching it. So like looking at it, you know, chunk by chunk to really appreciate, you know, the little touches is really cool.
At least for me, I watch shows that are well animated or just well executed in a lot of ways, and out of the gate, you can sometimes be daunted by that stuff and be like, man, I could never do that. That's so well done. And I think if you start looking at it frame by frame and breaking it down, it feels like, oh, I understand what's happening here. I could probably do close to that. Maybe I could push to that level, you know? Hopefully that gets you pumped up. Has this Arcane frame by frame inspired you? I hope it has. You could spend the next 2 weeks just really amped up you know, thinking all about it and how cool it is and all these little, you know, animation nuggets and ultimately let that inspiration go to waste. Or you could use that inspiration fuel to take action right now. You could start animating your own personal Arcane shot just to practice something that you just saw. Just maybe one thing that's like 50 frames. Or you could get clear step-by-step direction, you know, day to day, and really start pushing for that next animation unlock, that next level with our free 28-day animation challenge. Or another option, for those of you who are super serious about succeeding as an animator, is Rusty Animator School. A new term is kicking off in January. The school tailors to you as an animator, your goals, your struggles, your week-to-week results. You'll level up far faster than you ever have before as you craft the best animation shots you've ever made. Our world-class pro animators from all over the world mentor tiny live weekly classes of 4 students max, and they actually care about your success. It's not just another paycheck for them. If you want to finally land your dream job, it's worth a couple minutes to look. You can check out our student showcase for last year right here. Whatever you choose to do, I hope you use that inspiration to start animating right away. Don't let the inspiration go to waste, please. Talk to you soon. Happy animating.